Hello again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything, and I'm coming back at you with another Wargaming and miniature video. In this video, we're going to be building this Vallejo paint rack from Tabletop Scenics TT Combat. I already have a set of these that I use, but I realized that this actually will hold 100 paint bottles, and I have something closer to 180 paint bottles, 190, something like that. So I needed a second set. So I figured this would be the best time, putting the second set together, to film it and kind of show you how you can put it together and how easy it is. It's actually very easy. So it comes in MDF, and it comes in this old baggie here. Let's go ahead and tear this open. Okay. You can't smell this through the camera, but this really has a burnt wood smell to it. It's kind of a cool smell, but it's strong. Okay, so let's go ahead and get all of our parts out. I have my X-Acto knife here, mainly to trim anything that I need to trim, but you can kind of see little pieces of wood burrs that stick out. What I like to do is just trim a little bit of that off. You don't have to. It won't interfere with the way this goes together. It won't interfere with the way it sits on your table. I'm just kind of anal about it. So let me clear these burrs. I'll be right back. Okay, that took me about 1 minute to do all that. Now you've got, these are the inside supports. You get 2 of them. If you wanted to, you could maybe glue them together and have a really tall paint rack, but the connection here would be weak in my opinion. So let's just go ahead. This is all, the outer side of it or whatever is all just extra that you can get rid of. This is not something you need to save. So I'm going to drop it over there on the side while I pop all of these out. All right, let me go ahead and get all these support pieces out, and then I'll be right back. Okay, that took me about 30 seconds to pop those out. Now I look at these just to make sure that there's no real excessive burrs like on that. And I cut these tops at about a 45, or the bottoms at about a 45, just to ensure that it's a clean cut. And I use a very sharp X-Acto knife. If you use a dull X-Acto knife, you could damage the MDF board. It can separate on you. It's basically multiple layers of board just pressed together, but you could accidentally like peel a piece off or something like that. If you do, just apply a little bit of Elmer's glue and glue it back into place. All right, let me trim these other ones and I'll be right back. All right, that took me about 10 seconds to do. So these are all trimmed. Let's set those off to the side. These are all trimmed. I'm going to set them off to the side. Now you get this really wacky thing here. The inside piece is something that we're not going to save. We're not going to save this wiggly thing. We are saving these straight pieces. Okay, but what I like to do with any of my MDF models, the buildings or any of that, I like to break the outside, kind of like you're building a puzzle, but in a reverse way. I like to tear off what's not part of the model. You might see people that pop the model out from inside the MDF, and then they have like this big piece of frame. I don't concern myself with that. If it's not part of the model, it's kind of like a Michelangelo or whatever you call it, like a Picasso. No, not a Picasso. Kind of like a someone who works with stone, like an artist that carves, what they do is they look at a stone and they chisel away everything that is not part of the art. And that's what I'm doing with this. I'm getting rid of the outside that's not part of the model. If that makes sense. And then what I do is I pop all of these out, which is going to take me a minute because I only have 2 of them so far. Let me pop all of these out and then I'll be right back. All right? All right, great. All right, so now I've got all 20 of these cut out. So now what I want to do is go through and trim these up just a little bit. It did take me about 5 minutes to pop all of those out. Now I trim these because I'm going to be assembling and I want to make sure that they fit in everything they need to fit in. So what I do is I cut, again, not at a 45, maybe a 45, 30-degree angle, something like that, on the corners. And it looks like that's really the only 2 places. There is a little bit of flash right here at the bottom in the middle, but I don't really care about that. You'll never see it. And it won't interfere with the way your paint rack goes together, and it won't interfere with the way the paints sit on the rack. So all these spots are really, they don't need to be cleaned up at all, really. You don't, but again, I am, just because I'm a perfectionist, and if you wanted to be a perfectionist, you could do the same. All right, so I'm not gonna stall and cut at this point. I just wanted to tell you, this is a question that I suspect you might have in your head or ask. Why this paint rack? Why not a different one? Because there are a number of paint racks on the market. Some of them as high. I've seen a rack that had 83 paints in it for like $30 or something like that. And I was thinking that's pretty good. But then when I saw this, which is 100 paint bottles for only 10 pounds, because TT Combat is in the UK. And I was like, okay, 10 pounds, that's awesome. But then you got to work in your shipping, right? And for me, shipping's about another 7 pounds, believe it or not. So it comes out to about 17 pounds, which, if I do the math, I think it's around 25, no, not 25, like $23, $24 total for this, maybe even less, for this whole paint rack. And I'm thinking $20 for 100 versus $30 for 80. So this is a way better a deal when it comes to just cost. And I was like, okay, well, let me do this. Let me buy one of the racks, put it together, and see if I like it, right? Because 10 pounds, not it's not going to break the bank, right? And I said, what the hell, I'll do it. If I don't like it, I could always go order that 83 rack if I wanted to. And so I ordered it, got it in, put it together, put it on my shelf, been putting paint bottles in it, and I got excited. I'm like, yeah, this fits nicely on my desk. It doesn't interfere with my, it's great. It's a great. Now, if there was any kind of negative that I'd want to say about this paint rack, is that it's level. I know you're saying, Mr. Everything, it's level, that's a negative? Yeah. So when I put my paint bottle in there, the bottle sits horizontal. It sits perfectly side by side. It doesn't have any kind of tilt to it, right? It sits just like that. And so I was kind of like, I don't know if I like that, because I'm the kind of guy that likes to store his paint bottles upside down, so that the pressure of the paint against the lid keeps it dry. And I've got paints here that I've stored that way, that I've used in 1990, 1991, 1992, and they're still good today. I painted with one the other day and I was shocked. I said, oh my gosh, I had this one since 1991. And it's still good. Okay. So so that's, for me, that's a negative. That I can't store my paint bottles in a downward way. But I've come up with a way to actually do that. So I'll show you when I start putting the paints in the rack. I'm going to actually show you that. Would I recommend this paint rack? I mean, yes, it's cheaper. It's made by TT Combat, which uses a different type of MDF. Maybe it's thicker, but it's also maybe a lower quality MDF. But it is thicker, and once you get it all glued together, it works just fine. And look at this, I got a mess on my legs. Okay, no worries. Just something I thought I'd want to throw out there. It says 28 to 32 millimeter scale. That has nothing to do with the paint rack. One big advantage that I have with this rack, most Vallejo racks are the same way, but it doesn't hold just Vallejo. It also holds Army Painter. So I've got my Army Painter paints that I have started to fall in love with, and I've had my Vallejo paints that I've been in love with for a long time. They both fit on this rack. They both fit flat, except with my technique I'll show you here in just a second. All right, so now we've got all these pieces ready to go. We've got these support pieces ready to go, and then we got these end pieces ready to go. Okay. Wow, this is going to be like super easy to put together. I know you're like, wow, Mr. Everything, you said it was going to be like super easy. Yes, it's going to be super easy. Okay, I like to have the burns on the inside and the side that has less burns on the outside. That's just me. So I find where the burns are, where the less burns are. Okay, we take one of these racks and understand that these racks go like this with the points up. That way your bottles can sit inside of them. Okay. Get some Elmer's or any other kind of glue, tacky glue or whatever you want to use. And I put just a little bit above and below. That was actually opposite, but above and below the tab. Again, I'm trying to put the burn marks on the inside. Something you might consider is once you get it put together and assembled, you might consider applying a coat of paint onto it, just to give it a color that you like. But I like the wood color. We got all of those in. Now what we're going to do, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a little glue on the top of each of these pieces. All right, now you can, I don't know if you can't see that because of the way the camera is. There you go. I got glue all the way on the top of those. So now I'm going to line these up and just snap them into place. Okay, now I'm just making sure that all of the sides are pressed all the way in, so there's no like wood bowing or bending like that one right there. Okay, it pops. There we go. Because these will break. They'll snap if you push on them too hard. Okay, so I think I got all of them in. Okay, that was nice and tight. This one kind of came out a little bit. Go have it push in. Okay, I'm just going to make sure all of these are in again. Yeah, see, some of them are moving a little bit. Yep, all the way in, nice and snug. I'm going to do the same up here. You can kind of visualize if it's in or not just by seeing the tab if it doesn't go all the way in. And just keep working it until both sides are completely all the way in. Now you could probably leave this like this to dry a few minutes before you move on to the next step. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave this to dry. I'm going to start working on this second one before we go to put the support beams in, okay? The support beams go in after this is kind of settled and dried a little bit. So I'm going to give it a good 10 minutes, let that dry, just enough to kind of grip a little bit while I work on my next rack, okay? And I'll be back to show you how I finished that first one. Okay, before I go back to that next one, you might notice that this has got a very small gap in it, which makes it closer to the bottom, where that one has a large gap. The bottom of your paint rack is the short side, the one closest to the bottom. That way, the tall part here will keep this paint bottle from rolling out of your rack. Okay, so both of these frames are finished, right? We got our first frame, second frame. Okay, we're going to work our way back to the first frame while the second frame dries. And then we're going to take two of these support beams and they're going to go inside. Okay, if you look at this model, you will see that there are grooves here and here, and this support beam with the small side at the bottom, the long side at the top, is going to go down in there and fit into those grooves. Okay, so we're going to these will spread a little bit while you're doing it. All right, now the indents here are where you would apply the glue. Not a lot, just a tad. And what I like to do is apply it to both sides because you want it to grip on both sides. Now what I'm going to do is stand it up like this. Now if I line it up and I push down on it, it should just pop right into place. As long as it's lined up, of course. Okay. Line this one up, line that one, and this one. It's got to go up some more right there. Okay, I had to push a little harder to get those to pop into place. Okay, so now I squeeze on both sides to kind of get that pressure, right? Okay, that's in. Now I need to do the second one. Do the same thing. tension is pretty much going to hold that into place. You really don't need any glue. But I put the glue on here because I like it to be secure. Okay, put it in. I go in too far so that this big flat piece is against this wood here, and that's how I twist it and get it to line up. Not perfect, but it's lined up. And then I just push it down. Until it's about the right height. And then I start snapping the sides in to their holes. Okay. And this one, I did this one right here. There we go. Okay, now all the sides are in. If you had clamps or maybe rubber bands, you could put them on here to kind of hold everything together. I don't think it's really that necessary. It's pretty sturdy without it. And that's a paint rack right there. That's how you put together the paint rack. Let me put together the second one, and that'll give this time to dry, and then I'll show you how to hang paint on it. All right, guys, this is that first rack that I was doing. It's still not dry, but that's okay. For demonstration purposes, it won't have any problem with that. Okay, if you look at this rack straight on, you can see that there's no slope in any of the paint bottle holders, right? You have 5 stories, 10 paint bottles across. Now, I have seen pictures where they would take both paint racks and they would stack them on top of each other. Now, the issue here is you would definitely need to glue here, 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 and there to make sure that you get all 100 in one solid paint rack. Now, what I might consider doing in this case is putting some of that extra MDF that you broke off and threw away. I might glue a piece here sticking up like as a tab, maybe on both sides of this and one side of this, so that when you slide this down in there, you'll have a lot more support for a second rack. I don't think I need one this tall. Maybe I do. I'm running out of desk space, but that's okay. I think this one is the second one. Let me go ahead and put it off to the side just so it's out of the way. And let me show you how to put your paint bottles in there. Now I've got Vallejo here and I've got Army Painter, right? Okay, so a couple of different theories, right? If you're looking at it from this direction, like from the camera, you might put it in like this with the paint and then have this up against a wall, okay? So imagine your wall back here, and then you could just slide it in just like that, right? And then it would rest up against the wall, whatever. And I'm facing the wall along the back edge here. It's even front and back, so it doesn't matter which way you have it facing. And you could leave it like that. Now, there's another theory is you could store your paint like that. Okay, if you do store your paint like this, the dropper head sticks way out. It sticks a good 10 millimeters, a good, no, not 10, 20 millimeters past the outer edge. So like if this was your wall, almost the entire paint bottle dropper sticks out. So you can't do the back, which is how I normally like to look at my paint. What I normally like to do is have my paint going down like this, right? So that I could actually see everything about my paint. So what I do is, you can see that there is a little groove or a little notch here. Also on Vallejo, you've got between the bottle and this dropper, you've got like this little notch. So when I put my paint in, I push it in as far as that notch and let it sit on that notch. Now you'll notice that the paint bottle, I don't know if you can notice this, but you can kind of see the paint bottle is tilted downwards towards the dropper head. That way it'll keep my paint good. And the Army Painter will do the same, but not at as steep of an angle. It's a much shallower angle, because when you're looking at your Army Painter compared to your Vallejo, the design of the bottle is a little bit different. Okay, so it has more of a gap here. So you push it in and you drop it as far as you can on the rack. Downside, you can't put this on a wall because it sticks out. If I wanted to put this up against a wall, I would have to put my paint in like this. Like that. And that's okay too. When you're looking at your paint, you just have your dropper bottle and you just grab it and pull it out. Problem I find with the Vallejo paints this way is the colors are written at the bottom of the label. So I want, in addition, I want the bottom of the label to be here, so it's kind of so I can read it. I understand I don't necessarily need to read it because I can see the color right here and I can kind of pick and choose how I want to do it. But luckily, I have a wall here. I have this wall here that I'm going to be putting my paint up against. Here, let's move these that need the rack. And I need to go through and organize my paints, like with blues and grays all together and junk like that. So when I go and put this up against that little wall, I don't push it all the way up against the wall. I give myself 10 millimeters or something like that, so that when I put, maybe more, when I put my paint in, nose first, see, I've got some room there, and I don't push it all the way in. I was initially planning on hanging these on the wall, right? And then that would put them right up against the wall. Well, if I do that, then I will definitely have to put them in butt first, and they would just be flat. They wouldn't be hanging down, because when I hang down, I got to stick them in just a hair farther and let it hang down like that. But that's what I'm doing on the back side. I'm pulling this out just a little bit. Nose in, bottle down. But just depending on how you hang your paints, you might go about it a different way. You might like it to be exactly perfectly even like that, which in this case would be like that. And then you could put it up against a wall flat, no problem. All right, guys. Well, thanks for coming out and watching me put these two paint racks together. Maybe you learned something about how to hang your paints and store them, because storing them head up like this, the paint will actually, the weight of the paint will go down, and if there is any kind of it's not vacuum sealed, so any kind of air will actually get, when the paint goes down, the vacuum will actually pull air. Okay, here we go, that's better. When the paint goes down into the bottle, it'll pull air into the paint, causing the paint to dry up. When you have your paint stored upside down, like this, then the paint will push against the bottom, pushing air out. And so the paint that's in this part of the bottle will not dry up. In both cases, you still need to get like a paper clip and poke holes in it if it ever does get dried up. Like if you've got it sitting there and that's one color you haven't used in a year, you probably want to poke it. You definitely want to make sure that the insides are stirred, and you might consider agitation balls or something inside this. But if you store it upside down, it's less likely you'll need to do that. And that's why when I put it in a paint rack, I try to store it with it tilted down a little bit. All right, thanks for coming out and checking out this video, and I'll catch you next time.